over to you in just a few minutes.
Okay.
First of all, everybody that's signing on, my name is Dr. Carlos Perez, and I'm joining you from Nova Southeastern University. We're in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Davie, Fort Lauderdale. It's a beautiful day down here today. We want to mention to you that if you can, please share these opportunities with your friends and family, nova.edu/shark chats. And Dr. Tartar, are you all set?
Ready, Captain.
All right.
Hi, everybody. Again, thank you so much for being here today. We're really happy that you could join us on this webinar. As Dr. Perez mentioned, I am Dr. Jaime Tartar. I'm a professor in the Behavioral Neuroscience Program and Program Director of the Behavioral Neuroscience Program here at Nova Southeastern University. I also have a nonprofit academic organization, the Society for Neurosports, where we look at research and we try to connect people in the field of sports neuroscience, and you'll see a little bit of that in my talk today. So before we start talking about why your brain is misbehaving, we should start out by telling you why your brain is amazing. So the brain is amazing. Human brains, although only about 3 pounds, 20% of the energy in your body goes to feed your brain, and it's doing a lot of things. So if you think about just the storage capacity of the human brain, we're at like 2.5 petabytes. So I know we're all watching a lot of Netflix these days, so that would be like 3 million hours of TV shows. That's a lot of memory. You've got 86 billion neurons. So that's about 11 times more than all the people living on Earth right now. Your brain, without you having to tell it what to do, it automatically regulates your heart rate. It tells you when you need to drink salt versus plain water. It regulates your temperature. It does all of these things for you without you having to do anything. The brain also is amazing in the sense that it's immunologically privileged from the rest of the body, which means for the most part, in most cases, when our body gets sick, our brain doesn't get sick. And in fact, when we sleep at night, our brain cleans itself out. It takes out all the waste products for us. Most importantly, even zombies like human brains, and zombies can't be wrong. But there has to be a but, because if I just told you how amazing the human brain was, the talk would be one slide and we would all leave at this point. Obviously, there's a few hiccups, right? And one of the major hiccups with human brains has to do with the incredible and extraordinary rates of mental illness. About 50% of Americans, and all my statistics that I'm going to tell you are based on America, so about 50% of Americans are going to be diagnosed with a mental illness at some point in our life. Major mental illnesses that we suffer from are depression, anxiety. About half of people report that they feel lonely a lot of the time. We have unbelievable amounts of stress. I mean, if you talk to anybody, can you imagine anybody telling you that they don't feel stressed? Sometimes our brains don't seem to be able to regulate our emotions very well. Sometimes we forget things. I don't know if you're like me. I walk out to get the mail and I start looking at the grass and then the sky, and I don't even know why I'm standing in my yard anymore. So obviously, it might seem like our brains hate us, but I'm going to give you some good news. Human brains are just not adapted for modern society. So it's not that your brain isn't working, it's that your brain is a brain that's not prepared to live in an industrialized world. And we're going to talk today about 3 major reasons and 3 major points where that's the case. And we're going to talk about things that we can do to better adapt our environment to keep our brains healthy and happy. So the first thing we want to talk about is, where did these human brains come from and why are they not evolved and adaptive for modern life? So the Homo sapien brain has been around for about 200,000 years. Not much has changed. Structurally, it's pretty much that same brain. Something extraordinary did happen about 60,000 years ago. Human civilization changed. It was really this great leap forward in the ability of humans to spread out. This is where we started spreading out throughout the world. We started to be able to do art. Most importantly, we started to have language, right, to be able to communicate with each other. We started being able to socialize, to talk to each other, communicate ideas and information. This was sort of in the last ice age, and it was very difficult times for humans. We almost didn't make it. A lot of other human species that were around at the time didn't make it. We're the only existing and surviving bipedal primates that are left. And about this time, we were only at about 2,000 humans, but we did make it. And came into the social cultural revolution about 12,000 years ago. We moved away from hunter-gatherer societies largely, and we started to dominate agriculture, right? We started learning how to plant foods and not having to hunt and gather as much. So the important thing to keep in mind is that the brains that we have are those brains. Those are the brains that were around 60,000 years ago and were really adapted to live in this type of environment. Most of human history is hunter-gatherer environment. We've only been industrialized for about 200 years. Our biology has in no way kept up with our technology, and that's going to cause some hiccups for our brains. Most important behavior where we tend to see a lot of hiccups is with social behavior. There's a very important number for your brain, and that number is 150. It turns out that your brain can really only handle 150 people in your social group. It's critically important for humans and other primates, but especially Homo sapiens. One of the reasons we did survive is because we were empathic. We were able to bond together. We were able to take care of our children in groups. We're an extremely social animal. Our brains are really only able to keep track of about 150 people. So when I learned about Dunbar's number, and we were doing some research on this in one of my classes, I was thinking, oh crap, I work with about 137 people, and I know them really well, and I know about them, and I know kind of what they do, and so that means I don't have a lot of room left for friends and family, so I've had to put my friends and family on a list and like number them, and as soon as somebody behaves, they come off the list. But I have a job, so. Industrialized humans, we have about 600 people. It's a really complicated paper. If anybody wants it, I'll send you the reference. And they did the math, they did the numbers, and it turns out most of us have about 600 people in our social network. So you can see right there, your brain's going to start having a little bit of hiccups. Social community for humans, as I said, is critical and necessary for survival. We really need to rely on strong, tight, meaningful social networks. Unfortunately, in modern society, social community is pretty superficial and oftentimes unstable. And a lot of this leads to those high numbers, 20% of Americans developing mental illness. One of the things I wanted to tell you was one of the reasons and ways our brains are able to be so social and to be able to help us navigate our social world is these very special neurons that humans have. They're only found in social, highly intelligent animals, so humans, elephants, other primates, dolphins have these. These are von Economo neurons. And so these neurons basically go from one area of your brain, the anterocingulate cortex, right, to the insular cortex, and they really help to go straight away from one part of the brain to the other without having to make a lot of connections. So these neurons are critical for us, and they're critical for highly intelligent social animals. And because of that, one of the things that causes us, modern humans, great stress is social evaluation. We don't like social evaluation, and our brains do not handle this well. So since I've got a couple of 13-year-old twins at home, and they love playing the game, Would You Rather? So I thought we could play that game today. So would you rather do 10 minutes of an evaluated speech, kind of like what I'm doing now, talking into a void, 10 minutes of an evaluated speech with some subtraction in front of an audience, or would you rather run at about 70 to 85% maximum heart rate, so you're really almost at 100% heart rate, running on a treadmill for 30 minutes? And for body economy, this should be a no-brainer, right? For most of human existence and most animals, they need to conserve energy, right? If I'm standing here giving a talk, I'm barely moving, I'm not using a lot of energy. This should be what we want to do. Running for 30 minutes is using a lot of those precious resources in our body. What is more stressful to humans? It turns out giving a speech in front of an audience is much more stressful to humans. So if you look at these little black bars and that red arrow, you can see the baseline cortisol levels, and cortisol is our dominant stress hormone in our body. Those baseline cortisol levels go up pretty high, 36% increase in cortisol. And I do a lot of stress research. I'm in the business of trying to move cortisol, and I can tell you, it's really hard to run an experiment and get cortisol levels to increase. We we don't get that actually as much as we would like. And this, out of all the stress experiments I've done, this is the experiment where we saw the largest increase in cortisol. And we did this experiment in 2012. We brought people into a room, we made them give these speeches in front of a panel, and I was on the panel. And your job as a panelist is to make that person uncomfortable. And it was so awful for me, I will never do this experiment again. So it was awful for the participants, it was awful for me. However, when we gave people more recently a 30-minute run on a treadmill, same age group, same demographics, they didn't really increase their cortisol levels at all, really, really marginal. And what's interesting is if you can see the blue dots, which is the control group, these are the same individuals actually at a baseline condition, their cortisol levels are actually going down, right? So, and you can see the same thing happening in the control condition and the other graph. Cortisol levels go down in the control conditions. And this is something that we see a lot in the lab. And what's really happening, it's not that the cortisol levels are going down because of anything we're doing. It's that they come into the lab aroused because of the social situation, right? They come in a little bit amped up from that situation of being in a lab, just another indication that we are really sensitive as humans to social stress and social evaluation. So I know that sounds very bad. So what can we do? What can we do with these modern brains of ours to make our ability to deal with stress better, maybe decrease the rates of some of these mood disorders? Well, one of the most important things that you can do, and something that you have readily available to you, is deep controlled breathing. It turns out when we're having one of these fight or flight responses, when you feel very scared or very anxious and your heart's racing and your pupils are dilating and you're breathing really heavy, you've activated a part of your nervous system called the sympathetic nervous system. And one way to force the sympathetic nervous system to slow down, to activate that sort of rest and digest parasympathetic nervous system, is to take those deep controlled breaths. You know, breathe in, out, and it does physiologically switch from sympathetic nervous system to parasympathetic nervous system. So where breathing rate will go down, heart rate will go down. So this is something you can do, and it actually works. This is something you can do right away if you're feeling very, very stressed or anxious. What about the long term? There turns out there are other things that we can do. One of the things that seems to work very well is gratitude. And this is very difficult for us because our brains are hardwired to want to process negative information over positive information. And remember, part of the reason we did if we could switch and sort of force ourselves to think good thoughts, right? Think gratitude. Today, I'll go home and try to, be very grateful to Carlos and Janine for the hard work that they did today and helping us out. This is effortful for our brains, but if you do it, your brain physiologically will show signs of being happier. So this has been studied over and over again. Another thing that you can do is to label your negative feelings in a granular way. And this is actually called emotional granularity. So do you feel yucky? Or can you really zero in on that? Is it that you feel bad and stressed? Or is it that you feel a little bit worried and discombobulated, right? The more you can zero in on specifically what you're feeling, the better able you are to handle that emotion. So you really want to think about, you have this sort of cloud of nebulous feeling, the ability to zero in on specifically what that feeling is, the better off you'll do. We know that suppressing your emotions and just trying to push it down and not feel it isn't the best way to go about it. And I was uncertain of this last one because I know that we're quarantining right now, but for the future, maybe. So with your friends and after the pandemic, or maybe with people you live with, it turns out hugging, physical contact is so important for humans. So you can actually decrease fear and anxiety, brain circuitry activation, and you can increase oxytocin, sometimes called the love hormone. When people hug, give these deep, meaningful hugs to people, they show that they actually have a little bit of protection against emotional insults for the rest of the day. Another interesting thing about hugging, there was other research that also demonstrated that hugs actually give us a little bit of an immune boost temporarily. So when it's safe to do so, don't be afraid to reach out feel good about your friends, experience that gratitude, and hug your friends. Experiencing gratitude especially feels feels weird, but it's kind of a little bit of a trick. By thinking of good things about other people, you actually make your brain healthier. So what about this other thing that we don't do well, right? Our brains are not very good at helping us sleep. And you might think, why is my brain doing this? We actually know a lot. We think we know a lot about hunter-gatherer, the natural sleep condition, because there have been some researchers, one researcher in particular, Dr. Siegel, went and studied 3 hunter-gatherer populations across the world, in Bolivia, Tsunami tribe, the Hadza in northern Tanzania, and the Sand tribe in the Kalahari Desert. These are all hunter-gatherer populations. The Kalahari tribe has been there since the beginning of Homo sapiens. So we can look towards their sleep as a way of understanding what's going on in modern society that we're having all of these sleep difficulties, and we are. We have very high rates of insomnia, and when you interview these tribes, they don't even have a word for insomnia. You know, when the researchers explained to them what they meant, they kind of understood it, but the word didn't exist to them. So that tells us right away there's something's going on in industrialized society. So all of these hunter-gatherers wore these wristwatches that it's almost like an Apple Watch on steroids, right? It like does a very good job at recording their sleep and activity. And what we find is actually quite surprising. Hunter-gatherer populations are not sleeping any more than we are. They're getting about 6 hours and 40 minutes of sleep. We on average, and this is a study that used the exact same measurement with the same age group, 6 hours and enough. We know from lots of other research that 6 hours time in bed is sleep restriction, and people don't do as well. People do best with 8 hours time in bed, at least 8 hours of sleep. What was perhaps most surprising about the work that Jerry Siegel did is one of the best predictors of when people went to sleep seemed to be a drop in temperature, right? So your body was really relying on this drop in temperature to cue you that it's time to go night-night, right? It's very hard to do that, especially like us. You know, I live in South Florida. I've got the AC cranking all the time. And when the study first came out, I talked to my husband about it, and I always want to turn the condition down, and he doesn't too, because he, he wants to control the air conditioner. So I think if my husband and I ever get divorced, it's going to be about the temperature of the air at night. We're constantly fighting over it. But I made him read the paper, so I'm thinking he might be convinced now. The other thing that we don't do as well is we don't regulate our light. And it's important for us to recognize how important that is. Turns out we have very special receptors in our eyes that their only job is to respond to light and tell your brain when it's time to go to bed and when it's time to wake up. And when we have light all day and all night, it's very difficult for our brains to do that. And we'll see how that goes in just a sec. So here's the data on that temperature. So the paper was in Celsius, but we're all Americans, so I put it in Fahrenheit too for us. And so you can see that at sunset, surprisingly, isn't when these hunter-gatherer populations were going to sleep. They're going to sleep when the temperature drops, right? So the peak temperature during the day, about 86. At sunset, it's going to drop to 75. But sleep onset doesn't really come until the temperature drops even more, till about 61 degrees Fahrenheit. And they wake up with the sunlight, and we'll see why that is. Right. So I told you have these very special receptors in your eyes. Their only job is to respond to light signal. And one of the most important chemicals that they regulate is melatonin. So melatonin, sometimes people think, oh, melatonin is good because it helps us go to sleep. And that's not really melatonin's job necessarily. The most important job that melatonin has is to help regulate your circadian rhythm, to let your brain know when it's daytime and when it's nighttime. So we want to make sure at night that we are increasing melatonin levels. So in the absence of light, melatonin, that's a signal for melatonin levels to go up at night. And having melatonin properly regulated, we know that melatonin has immunomodulatory roles. It's an antioxidant. It helps with bone formation. Light at night is even thought to be a carcinogen. There's a very close relationship between shift workers who are exposed to light during night and during the day, and their risk for breast cancer. So we want to make sure that when we're sleeping, even if you're a shift worker, you need to sleep in the dark and you need to be awake in the light. So just to sort of show you what we found in our lab, we did an EEG study looking at people's brains, their emotion processing after we took away a night of sleep. We look at a brain measure of emotion processing. It happens very quickly, right about the time where the brain's just becoming consciously aware that it saw something. So if you look at the slide on the bottom, those two little colored squiggly lines are the brain's response to emotion. And that's different than the black squiggly line, right? That's a little bit higher. That's the brain's response to a not emotional image. And we show them, some nice images, and then we show them some images that are a little bit less nice, like a snake. And so what do we find? And I'll just tell you, because I know this, probably are not all EEG researchers out there, but after a night of sleep deprivation, surprisingly, your brain is no longer able to differentiate emotional images from non-emotional images. So your brain is responding to a picture of a coffee cup the same way it is to a burn victim. However, the people are able to tell us by rating on a keyboard that yes, that is a negative image. Yes, that is a neutral image. At the level of their brain though, below their conscious awareness, their brain isn't recognizing the differences between these pictures. So we get this emotional instability after sleep deprivation. We even saw this just looking at morning versus evening. As people get sleepy throughout the day, we also see that their brain is less able to differentiate emotional images from non-emotional images. Sleep is necessary for emotion processing. So what can you do? So hopefully I've sold you on sleep. I don't have any money in big sleep, I promise you, but I hope you'll want to get some better sleep. So what can you do? So one of the most important things you can do for your sleep hygiene is to regulate your light, right? Exposure to blue light in the day, very, very dim light at night. Go ahead and drop that temperature at night. Fight with your spouse. Have them email me. Go ahead around the time that you want to go to bed, drop your temperature. Manage worries. And we talked about ways that you might be able to do that, right? Decrease your stress levels. Your brain likes nothing more than it likes consistency. So you want to wake up and go to bed at the same time every day. Your daily rhythm is important for regulating the hormones in your body, and it really relies on a proper circadian rhythm to know which hormones to release at which time of day. You want to be physically active, and we're going to talk about that. This one's a little weird. You kind of want to use your bed only to sleep, but maybe if you want to do like one other activity, that's probably okay. You want to limit caffeine. During the day, we build up this chemical adenosine that helps us feel sleepy and go to bed at night. And it turns out caffeine antagonizes the receptors for that. So you really want to limit caffeine, especially as you get towards the afternoon and nighttime. With napping, we would say limit daytime naps if those naps are preventing you from going to sleep at night. If you're still getting solid 7, solid 8, go ahead and take them. But if you nap and you find that you're not sleeping well at night, you may want to limit those to make sure you're getting solid, consolidated sleep. So the last thing we want to talk about to help our brains not misbehave is physical activity. If you follow, and this is one of those hunter-gatherer populations that we brought up earlier, the Hadza, if you follow them in their natural lifestyle, they have about 2 hours and 15 minutes of moderate physical activity every day. And what's really amazing about these hunter-gatherer populations is you don't see a drop in physical activity as people get older. 60-year-old people are out there for 2 hours and 15 minutes on average, just like the young folks are. So they're very, very, very active. All hunter-gatherer populations are quite active. Industrialized humans, not so much, right? So about 5% of adults, less than 5% of adults are getting 30 minutes of physical activity each day. And I can tell you that in the field of neuroscience, this is a hot area right now. And we absolutely know that a healthy brain absolutely needs a moving body. You have got to move to keep your brain healthy. We see the fact that we don't move reflected in our BMIs. In the Hadza population, you don't see anybody with a BMI over 30, nobody they tested. The range was 18 to 26, BMI 30 or higher. following an animal, you're gathering tubers, you're out there, you're doing things, and you're thinking, as opposed to, what I do a lot of times, I get on the treadmill and try to think about nothing. So this idea that our brains do better when physical activity is combined with sort of a cognitively challenged activity is actually an adaptive capacity model. This idea that if we can do physical activity that's cognitively demanding, it's a little bit better than doing physical activity alone. So why? What is it about moving our bodies that makes our brains so healthy? Well, it turns out that one of the reasons is your muscles are actually going to release chemicals into your body that will affect your brain. One of the most important things that's released is a hormone called irisin. And irisin produces and it increases a very important chemical called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. And BDNF is basically food for your brain. Your brain can't get enough of this stuff. And in the presence of BDNF, you get neurogenesis, or you get increased connectivity. All kinds of studies have linked increased BDNF back to increased brain health. And one of the surefire ways of increasing BDNF is moving, is exercising. We can increase interleukin-6 to help our appetite and metabolism, capsaicin B, which will also help with memory improvement. So just moving around, just exercising, getting your muscles going will improve your brain health through the release of all of these chemicals. And that's not all. So your bones, it turns out, your bones also produce a really important chemical called osteocalcin. So you exercise, your bones respond to that, they produce osteocalcin, and osteocalcin does absolutely amazing things for your brain. Again, increases new neurons, helps with memory, helps with serotonin release. It's related to decreased anxiety, decreased depression. So osteocalcin is absolutely amazing. It's increased with exercise, and as you exercise and build up bone mass, it also increases. So that study I told you about earlier, where we asked you if you would rather give a speech or run on a treadmill. So we did not increase cortisol levels when we made people run on a treadmill. But what we actually did is we also gave them those same pictures and we looked at their brains. How is your brain responding to pictures? And it turns out that after 30 minutes of exercise, not only was that not stressful for the body, but it protected them a little bit. Their brains did not get as big of a response to those negative pictures. So we had a little bit of protection against emotionally negative information after exercise. And then when we asked them about their mood, they had less mood disturbance after exercise. So again, don't have any money in big exercise, but I definitely encourage you guys to exercise. You know, the scientists, you're always worried people are going to think you're a shill for something, but I'm not a shill for big exercise. I have nothing invested in that. Actually, I pay a gym to go there. So, and this is really timely for us. The other amazing thing that exercise does is it enhances immune functioning. Just a tiny bout of exercise, 6 minutes, 6-minute walk outside, you can increase all these innate immune system responses, natural killer cells, lymphocytes, neutrophils, monocytes, not necessarily part of the immune system, but I thought was pretty cool. You can actually change the length of your telomeres, which are sort of the caps of your chromosomes. And this is an indication of how old your cells are. So it turns out that you can increase the telomeres and decrease cell age through exercise. So what's the answer here? We talked about how to improve your mood, how to decrease stress. We talked about all those things you could do to sleep better. What about physical activity? It turns out this is the easiest one of all. You just got to move. That's all you have to do. You just got to move more. You probably don't have to move. I try to move 2 hours and 15 minutes a day because I want to be like the Hadza and really healthy. I've never done it. I just can't get there. But I try to get close, right? So you have to move more often. And sometimes I think, and I know I do this, when we tell somebody you have to exercise more, we get really stressed because this is what we think about, right? This is what we think of as exercise. Like, oh, I gotta go to the gym and like lift up, like look like The Rock, or I gotta go sign up for a marathon, do a dry try or some kind of triathlon and be flexible. And I don't want you to think that that's what I'm saying. You don't have to do any of these things. You have to do something very simple. It really is just move. You know, if you have a little person at home, go ahead and play with that little person. If you're walking into a building, take the stairs. Maybe kick a ball around your backyard, dance, go for a jog. But obviously you can do those other typical forms of exercise, jumping jacks. Maybe during a commercial, just get up, Do 50 jumping jacks real fast. It doesn't have to be anything prescriptive or anything onerous. Just in your own house, if you have the choice between moving and not moving, try to move a little bit more. So I guess it was a little bit, a little bit of a trick, right? Because I said your brain was misbehaving, but now we know you're misbehaving. Millions of years of evolution have absolutely ensured that the human brain is doing exactly what it's supposed to do for the environment in which that brain evolved. Your brain is not evolved to live in industrialized society. However, the fact that we know this information, we can use industrialized society towards our advantage to help us put our brain into a more healthy environment. We need to breathe, take those deep breaths. We need to show compassion for other humans. It's better for your brain. Try to manage thoughts. The more you can manage your thoughts, the more healthy your brain will be. Choose a positive thought over that negative thought. For sleep, be very critical about your light regulation. Be very aware of how much blue light you're getting in the day, how much light you're not getting at night. You want to try to regulate that temperature, limit caffeine. I know that's so hard, but maybe stop drinking coffee after about 11. And physical activity is the easiest one of all. Just move more. You don't have to sign up for a gym. You don't have to try to look like The Rock. Just get out there a little bit. And so that's all I have for you guys today. Trying to keep it about half an hour. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you could be here in this kind of odd time for all of us, especially me. I've never given a talk into a void before. So thank you.
Well, there's not a void. There's people that ask questions, and we're also getting messages throughout. So there's a lot of people jumping on, and you can see that if you're taking over the chats, there's people internationally that have signed on. There's some questions coming in. So there's people that miss you, and questions are coming in really quick. So it's gonna take me a little time to read you a question.
That's okay. I will have you know that Carlos, because I move around a lot, Carlos gave me a spot to stand on, and I stood on the spot the entire time. So.
Wow, wonderful. You know, I'm gonna on a personal note, I'm gonna mention to you, I love your piece on exercise, and it's really important for us to especially reach out to our elders. I try to do chair yoga with my 83-year-old mother every day at 11 o'clock. I missed her today, so I'll come back, and you just do these stretches and some motions, and she just comes alive, and it really just hits our endorphins.
Yeah, and there's a lot of studies, and Dr. Joseph Osman Gomez at University of Miami does a lot of work with older populations, and the benefits, neurological benefits of exercise are unbelievable.
Some of the quick questions that are come in, will we be able to show, will people be able to view this later? You know, tell your family, friends, your colleagues, come over to nova.edu/shark chats, and you could watch the recordings. There's other events coming up. We've got Yappy Hour coming next Monday, which is going to be really exciting, where we're going to have dogs involved. These are, you know, in higher education, there's a lot of criticisms for things that organizations might do today, and universities in the United States do incredible things with our students. Dr. Tartar here has helped mentor so many students, our clinical psychology program, many of our programs, and there's universities all over the country that are doing these things. And I think it's important for us to applaud and appreciate higher education and our school system. Our faculty are wonderful. Today is Earth Day, and as people are sending in some questions, I just want to give out a little reach out to the Earth. And I think that we are all learning what's important today, and what can we do to take better care of the Earth. And I think we could all become much more responsible citizens. One of the questions that has come in is, what is stressful for you?
Well, like talking into a void with no people in a room by myself is a little bit stressful. I'll say I'm a high responder, and I really struggle with that. I respond to things very easily, and I think I let my thoughts build up. Worry about things a lot, and I think, and that's kind of I think a good question, because I don't want you to think because I'm telling you these things that somehow I'm really good at all of them. I'm just like you, and I struggle with sleep, and I struggle with moving enough, and I struggle with stress. And I think for me, the thing that stresses me the most is probably like all of you is just, worry. I have those ruminating thoughts about things that I can't control. And I should mention that not only is stress difficult for people, but it's a very specific kind of stress. It's what we're all experiencing right now is when something is uncontrollable and unpredictable, we don't do well with that at all. And I think that's true for me, and it's kind of what we're all dealing with right now.
And one of the questions from Monica, and we know Monica. Hello, Monica. Welcome. Is these presentations available for the Spanish-speaking community? We'll see if this one can be done, but they are actually in the URL that I provided, nova.edu/shark chats. There's several presentations that are going up in Spanish as well. So we are definitely taking care of that. That is my first language. So. And I wish we had other languages. Actually,
I speak bad French.
Oh, you can do this in French. Wonderful.
No, really bad French.
So the other thing that you can do is have goals and exciting things to fulfill. I've talked to many people that are going back to school and pursuing a degree. Why not? Online education is wonderful. I teach online. Do you, Dr. Tartar?
I do now.
Oops. We all do. But,
I found out that I think I'm less funny teaching online than in person. Right? Nobody laughs at me. It hurts my feelings.
Well, I'll set up this stage for you anytime you want. But, can you pursue goals? One of the things I've had on my list is to learn another language. And I was talking to one of our faculty, one of our professors the other day, and he inspired me to learn sign. And
language, yeah.
What a wonderful opportunity to communicate it around the entire world. Well, any parting words?
No, I just want to, again, I'm just so grateful to all of you for being here today. And I'm like all of you, I'm very hopeful that things will get better for all of us. But in the meantime, hopefully some of this information will help you get less stressed, help your brain be a little bit healthier.
So we didn't get to answer every question, but if you need to follow up with me, my email is very easy. It's perez@nova.edu. My name is Dr. Carlos Perez. I'm here at Nova Southeastern University in beautiful Davie, our main campus. We are adjacent to Fort Lauderdale, and we hope you'll visit us someday. I'm an alumnus, the director of outreach, an instructor, and a fellow. And please share these sessions with your friends. We've got many others. Don't forget, Yappy Hour is on Monday. And please join us again.